now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@caymanmarlroad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
So good morning, everyone. First of all, happy Wednesday. It is December the 9th. We have, what's the countdown until Christmas, by the way? Is anybody doing a countdown this year? I feel like most people are not all that particularly excited about Christmas, but at the same time, I kind of feel like we should be. So yes, what are the plans for Christmas? We're going to start getting in Christmas mode here, definitely on CMR. Of course, as you guys know, the demonstration that's coming up on Friday, it's a demonstration against violence and lack of accountability. It is happening on Friday at 1 p.m. And we're just trying to confirm whether or not civil servants will be able to participate. So it's from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. Right in front of the House of Parliament, which is formerly the Legislative Assembly. And I'm going to show you guys the flyer that they have done up so that you can share that with your friends and family members. And we will definitely be posting that on the website as well. So, of course, you guys know that today is Caribbean Wednesday, Caribbean Connection Wednesday. So at some point, Danica will be checking in with us. So good morning to Carmelie. Good morning to Brandon. Good morning, Morna. How are you doing? Olivia's here for it. Good morning, my dear. Neri is here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, Kathy Phillips is here. Lulu is here, watching from the Bahamas. Thank you, Lulu. We appreciate your support. And how are things in the Bahamas, by the way? The Caribbean Connection Wednesdays is all about keeping our collective community together as a region, and remembering that, what's happening in Cayman oftentimes is happening in other places as well. And even if it's not, we can certainly be well informed about what's happening regionally, internationally, around the world, and just to stay informed and be connected with everybody else. So Evelyn, thank you, my darling, for tuning in as well. Cassidy says, greetings, CMR, pleasant Wednesday to all. And of course, it is Hump Day Wednesday. It means that we're halfway through the week. Good morning, Larry. How's New York? What's the weather like? So halfway through the week, it's a day that most of us get excited about because we feel like the work week, we're kind of almost there. But I got to be honest with you, those of us who are self-employed, it's just another day because you work Saturdays, Sundays, it doesn't really matter, right? So Siobhan, good morning. Beautiful Siobhan is tuned in, got it locked right here. And so does Miss Beulah. And of course, Jake is up bright and early with us. Jake, are you at the gym or are you on your way to work? Evelyn says, OMG, Christmas already. Yes, it is. So we got lots to talk about today. First of all, the demonstration against violence and lack of accountability is happening this Friday, from 1 to 3 p.m. in front of the House of Parliament, which is formerly the Legislative Assembly. And they say why? Because enough is enough. And they want everyone to wear orange. And there is a link that you can sign up for to basically get more information if you'd like. And I like what it says here about silence allows violence. And I do want to talk about that for a little bit this morning as well. Okay, so this concept that silence allows violence, we did have someone yesterday who was very, very concerned about this issue. And I thought she had some really salient points to make in terms of how so many organizations have been incredibly silent on this topic. And she is wondering why. So let me just, I'm going to actually pull this up here because she did send some comments. And by the way, that I appreciate that here in the Cayman Islands, we don't always have the freedoms that we think we do in terms of speaking out. And that's unfortunate. A lot of people remain fearful that if they do speak out, they will have repercussions. And it doesn't really matter, to be honest, if they're private or public sector. A lot of people are very, very hesitant to speak out. And so as a result of that, I find that, I want to just remind you all that you can send your messages through to us privately, and we will certainly, be happy to share those messages privately as well. So I know it's not the most ideal situation, but if you have an opinion, you can send it via WhatsApp. So let me just remind you of the WhatsApp number. Of course, here in this program, I'm trying to encourage people as much as possible to call in. Like, I can just send you guys the link right now. You can join in on the conversation. You can turn your camera off in case you're not camera ready yet for the morning. But, I do want you guys to recognize that you have an opportunity to speak on this program, just like you would if you called into the talk show, for example. So, barring that, however, like I said, I know a lot of you don't feel comfortable because you're either civil servants or you work for companies that are likely to penalize you if you make your voice be heard in the community. So you can certainly reach out anonymously as well. You can send WhatsApp messages 324-1612. You can email us at tips@caymanmallroad.com. And of course, we can also be contacted on our Instagram or Facebook pages as well. So a lot of you send your tips and information. Speaking of which, last night I got disturbing information that the fights at the government schools continue, and yet we have heard very little from government officials. So I will address this topic yet again, because I feel as though sometimes we're the only ones addressing anything. And that's unfortunate, but it's certainly not going to stop us from doing so. So I want to talk about that again, because if, my God, if we can't control violence in our schools, the question becomes, what hope is there really? So back to the protest. So this individual had a few questions about the, the participation and how people being very, very silent in their opinion. So this is some of what they had to say. Okay, so they were wondering, first of all, why a number of organizations have not spoken out. And they have said, let me just see here, that have they issued a statement given the guilty plea? This was from February, so they were referring to something else that was sent to them. So they were actually inquiring, the only organization thus far that has spoken out about this has been the Crisis Center. And obviously the Crisis Center is a place where people can go and victims can go and get some assistance. So they said, who puts on the Silent Witness March again? Ask them if they would endorse a march like theirs for the same purpose. These organizations need to stand up and speak when it matters. And of course, the people who put on the Silent Witness March is the BPBW, Business and Professional Women's Club, BPW, yeah. And they go on to say, and stop being silenced if silence doesn't help. Stop being silent if silent doesn't help. And in relation to BPPW, they said, okay, so that's a private initiative. They're all private sector groups, and they should be issuing statements condemning the situation or be ashamed themselves to ever hold such a march again. So this person is calling out organizations such as the BPW, who hold, on occasion, every year, their annual event is a Silent Witness March. So this person's of the opinion that, why haven't they issued a statement? So I said to them, the only one to have done so has been the Crisis Center, and that's it. And they weren't aware that the Crisis Center had issued one. So I did send them that link, and they said, what about all the other women's groups that brag about caring about women's careers? This woman was violently assaulted at work by a supposed employer. Yeah, well, I mean, close enough. Or at least an investor of the business, apparently. BPW should be raising hell on that ground alone. Where are the 100 women who care? The 100 Women of Finance. I forget what their group is called. I don't know if that's the exact name, but even the 100 Men Who Give a Damn group should be protesting if they gave a damn. And another big one, where is this big regional parliamentary group he's part of? Do they have no standards whatsoever for which they allow to lead their group? Hell, regional groups and organizations should be crying shame on this. And then they were asking if the Crisis Center has issued anything since February. Now, as you guys might remember, the article that I'm referring to in terms of the crisis center was actually them saying that this situation might be a tipping point on gender-based violence. It has hardly been a tipping point, but let's talk about, what a tipping point is and exactly what that means. So at the time, this was, let me just get the exact date. In February, the Crisis Center issued a statement, and I've just shared the link there. So this is February the 27th. And they say that, the situation with the bar manager being assaulted by McKeeva Bush might be a tipping point for the people of the Cayman Islands who need to bring the issue of violence against women to the forefront of public discussion, stating that whilst they abhor violence against women, against anyone, the immense exposure this case has received may not open the dialogue with the community, may now open the dialogue in the community towards eliminating gender-based violence, anger, hatred, and even locker room talk from our society. Now, I don't know that that has actually been done, but I think the same people who would have had the dialogue are still having the dialogue. And the point of this other person's comments yesterday is that they want other people who are in positions, such as the organizers of the Silent Witness March and, women's organizations, to really speak out about this. And by and large, that has not happened at all. So they go on to say here in their statement, let me just acknowledge that the outrage should be challenged in a positive manner and allows the much needed dialogue on the topic to be had in a frank and honest way. CICC, that's the Cayman Islands Crisis Center, shared that according to the RCIPS, there were over 2,218 domestic violence related calls and 747 calls related to child protection in 2008 alone. And these figures do not account for any guesstimates on how many incidences may not be reported at all. Because as we know, abuse, especially sexual abuse and rape and those types of things, violence against women tend to be some of the most underreported offenses. So if we had 2,218 domestic violence calls, you can probably double that figure or more in terms of what's really happening and the women who are not actually making any phone calls. So, I was in court last week, I think it was Thursday, and there was a gentleman there who was before Magistrate Hernandez, and he was involved in a domestic incident with his wife, and because of that, the court ordered him to be removed from the home. Now, what I find particularly interesting about his situation is the last time he was in court, which I think was October, maybe some months ago, the rehabilitation services here in the Cayman Islands had promised that he would start a program because apparently the next domestic violence program would not be beginning until sometime early next year after the holidays. And the judge had expressed her concerns about that. And so the rehabilitation people, they're in charge of like probation services and so on. They indicated that they would have started him on a one-on-one basis with this domestic violence program. And that had not been done as of last week. So the judge really expressed her displeasure that had not yet begun, because now, of course, we're coming up on the Christmas holidays and he wants to spend time with his family. But they had victim impact statements, including from his children. And his children were saying, listen, we don't want daddy back in the home unless he gets help, because he is a violent, disruptive person in the household. And I know that that's, really horrible when your own children have to put that in writing and say that to the courts. And of course, the judge made it ever so clear that despite his desire to want to return to the home, she could not be allowing him to do so on a permanent basis unless he was willing to get the help that he needed. And he said, listen, he's willing to do it, but obviously if the services are not there, what can he do? And so it was a little bit disappointing to hear that there was some sort of a delay in providing the service to him one-on-one. And from what I have seen, oftentimes just observing in court, a lot of the, my apologies, the services offered are done as group services, which I don't really know why that is or how they deliver their services. Are they just local people trying to teach these courses? Do they tap into international or even regional trainers? There's so much stuff that's available now by Zoom, for example. I think when it comes to domestic violence, a lot of it has to do with desensitizing the perpetrators. Just like of any crime, a lot of times they do not understand the impact that they have on the lives of the people around them. So on some level, I'm sure every abuser has loved the person that they abuse, and they don't get what their abusive tendencies do to those individuals, how they not only hurt people physically, but they hurt people psychologically and emotionally as well. It's a sad indictment, but I was also really concerned to see that for whatever reason, the rehabilitation arm of things wasn't working as well as it should be working. So the lady who was there on their behalf last week could not say why his services had not begun. She just didn't know. And, it's just really, really unfortunate that that was the case. So I'll go on to finish the comments here that were submitted. So this person goes on to say, let me just back up. So you can expect only expats, this is their opinion. You can expect only expats to be there, sadly, like last time, like with everything. And this is a key man saying this, by the way. And that's because the majority of the workforce here works for government, which is why I think it's important to hear from the deputy governor on this. Again, he has rules about signing petitions, but not sure about attending protests. And the person goes on to say, but I'm sure loads of them attended the Christian protests against the civil union law, though one of them held right out from the LA. If he needs, let me see. Okay. And then they go on and talk about how in terms of the protests against the civil unions, how a number of people participated in that, including civil servants, and seemingly that was fine. And there was no issue. And then they came back and said, someone said to me, if McKeeva goes, the coalition government falls, then there's a snap election is inevitable. That's why all the government ministers and backbenchers are silent. Well, I wouldn't say the backbenchers meaning the government backbenchers, the official opposition, particularly Mr. Ezra Miller, who technically is not part of the official opposition anymore. He resigned as opposition leader. But he has been very, very vocal on this issue, calling for the resignation from day one, or the removal of, of Mr. McKeeva Bush from the onset, and that just hasn't happened. So it's an interesting thing. Like I said, I have obviously pointed out from the perspective of legislators who not only make laws in the Cayman Islands, but they are responsible for setting a good example to other people in the community, women, children. They should be standing up for what is right, regardless of who it is. And I remain very, very concerned that has not been done, and that we continue to see them, especially the women in the Legislative Assembly, but I think all of them remain silent as it relates to this particular matter. Tara Rivers, I'm calling on you to have something to say, please. Barbara Connolly, I'm calling on you to have something to say. I would love to see you actually protest on this matter. Juliana O'Connor Connolly, same thing, calling on you to do something. Will you speak out? You know, what will you have to say on this? Nothing at all so far, and that's really, really disappointing. So thank you so much for that individual who sent those comments through. Like I said, they are actually a civil servant, so that is why the comments were sent in the manner that they were, anonymously. And again, I invite all of you to know that you can send your comments in the exact same way. You don't want to speak out, send them anonymously. So let me just read another anonymous comment that we received late last night from our Facebook page. And this one came again from another civil servant. And this is what they had to say. So thank you, Carol. Carol says, didn't Tara speak out on International Women's Day, but radio silence on this attack? Child, Carol, I wish I even knew what Tara speaks out about, because I don't recall having any recollection of her speaking out about much of anything during this last tenure of hers. So if she did, it was just one of those typical prepared statements as a government minister where they GIS hands it to them and they publish it saying, oh, message from Tara Rivers. And that isn't really, I think, what we're looking for, unfortunately. So let me just see what this person had to say. So this person says, hello, I wanted to comment. I have wanted to comment on many occasions on your talk show. However, as a civil servant working in blank, I'll leave that out. That's where they work. It is against our code of conduct, so I will leave that there. I wanted to say it is refreshing to hear about things that for far too long have been swept under the proverbial mat, old boys club running the country, off the back of the people for far too long, and not having the foresight as to what is truly needed. And then they have in brackets a customized and culturally relevant future-based curriculum that educated our youth up to the age of 18, proper science-based protection and enhancement of our air, land, and seas, and what is not needed, 100,000 population, the continued leaking of waste runoff into your water table from the dump, et cetera, et cetera. My passion is educating our generations to come. However, there are multiple issues and barriers for this and to our future unless someone stands up and defends the rights of the people and the environment we have to call home. And I said, good night. So this was sent late last night. And then they replied after we responded, and we said, thanks for sharing. And basically one day we hope that civil servants will have more of a voice. But in the interim, feel free to contact us here or via WhatsApp with your comments, and we're happy to share them. So they go on to say, thank you. I have lived here for 33 years, and I'm proud to say Cayman is my home. And whatever I can do to open the eyes and ears of the people, I will endeavor to do so to ensure a better, sustainable future for all. We have to look out for all the people of Cayman, as everyone else that is trying to get here is looking out for number one. So thank you so much to that individual who sent those comments through as well. Appreciate it. So yes, Carol, she has remained silent on this issue, as have most members of the Legislative Assembly. Lizette Barden, good morning to you. Mitzi is tuned in here. Mitzi, how are things going? Mitzi is in North Side. Marshall checking in from North Carolina. So folks, the protest is on Friday. They're asking that you wear orange. I've got to go in my closet and see what orange things I have to put on. But I think I've got an orange CMR shirt. I've got to make sure. So of course we will carry the protest live. And by extension, you can bet your bottom dollar that I am also likewise participating in the protests. I'm there wearing two hats, participating, covering it, participating, covering it. I support what these organizers are doing 100%. And I feel very, very strongly about violence against women, or anybody for that matter. So yes, that's where we're at, folks. Make sure that if you cannot participate, you still live stream the event. You send out your thoughts and well wishes to the persons who are organizing it. Okay, so let me just confirm a few things here. All right, Miss Miriam, thank you so much for tuning in. Anne-Marie Francis is also here for the conversation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Larry did mention to us that it is flurry. He's got some flurry in New York this morning, so it looks like they might be getting some snow. And it's probably very cold, 33 degrees. So thank you, Larry, for your little weather update. So let's talk about a few other things. We have another woman who's thrown her hat in the ring for the District of Prospect. I think I mentioned this last night on last night's program. Miss Sabrina Turner, entrepreneur, AKA businesswoman. She runs her own immigration services business for a number of years. She's also a former host of the Business Buzz, so she's recently resigned from that position. And she also was the community leader for Prospect and the Red Bay area for 2 years, and she continues to work on that committee, assisting the people in her district with everything from trying to address crime-related issues. She works closely with the Seamen's Association, and I'm just trying to remember what else. There's a number of things that are in her bio. So that story went up late last night. So folks, please do check that out if you'd like to learn a little bit more about Sabrina. We will be conducting an interview with her hopefully later in the week, going into the weekend. And it will be a conversations with segment first, because we want to know who Sabrina is, who your mama is, who your fa, where you come from, all those good things. So check out the story on Sabrina Turner. Again, she's a Prospect community leader who is throwing her hat into the race. Now, keep in mind that Prospect looks a little bit crowded in terms of candidates, because we've had 4 persons so far. So we have the incumbent, obviously, Austin Harris. We also have Frank Matfield, who has declared that he will be running in Prospect. And we have, who else? Michael Miles has also indicated that he will be running in the District of Prospect. So folks, that's 4 people. I think 4 people for any single district is a crowded field. But last time, as you guys will recall, we had a total of 63 persons running in the general election, and there's only 18 seats. So you do the math and you tell me what you come up with. That's just a whole lot of people who are seeking to run for political office. And for the first time, that's an average of about 4 people per constituency. And for the first time, we had a record number of women who were also running. And I think that that is probably going to be the position again this time. More women will put their hat in the ring. It's sad that of all the women that we had run last time, we only had 3 get elected. 2 were obviously incumbents. And the next one, Barbara was a newcomer. So we always hope that women will represent women's issues in the Legislative Assembly. They will bring a softer, more balanced presence to the LA. But as we can see thus far, what has actually happened is they just hunker down with the men and continue the same good old boys network. And they're pushing that from the background as women, which is so disappointing. You know, you hope that they would be in a position to break barriers and break through the glass ceiling, not just for themselves, but for the community as a whole. And that just doesn't happen. So Jonathan says this whole thing is vexing. We know what the problems are, but yet we keep electing the same parasites. 2021, we need a change. And I could not agree with you more. In terms of what is happening this week, folks, we do have Mr. Sammy Jackson, the attorney at law, who's going to be joining us on Friday. I believe that he will be coming on with Teresa Lewis, and they're going to be talking about this legal practitioners bill. It's quite something else. It seems like the Premier is doing everything in his power to push this bill through this time. Maybe he's fearful that he will not. Well, we know he won't be leader again because that's a 2-term limit. But maybe he's even fearful that if he gets some decent competition, he will be voted out of prospect. And he's trying to put the last nails in our coffins, folks. And we have to protest and do everything that we can to stop this legal practitioners bill. It's not in the best interest of Caymanian attorneys. And we need to find out exactly why that is. So I want to invite you to tune in and spread the word for Friday's session, because that's going to be the topic that's up for discussion. So Karen says Savannah is up for the taking. It's weird, Karen, but some districts are very, very quiet in terms of who might be challenging, others in that area. I don't know why that is. So Savannah is quiet. Red Bay is quiet. We've heard of no one yet that is prepared to run against the Premier. Why have we not heard of anyone? Maybe, everybody's trying to wait till January, I guess. We have heard of Savannah, we have 2 persons now. Malcolm has come out to officially say that he would be running. A lot of you are lukewarm towards Malcolm because the question is Malcolm just going to be a stamp of his father? And I think it is a legitimate question. And if Malcolm comes on the program, it's one of the questions that we're going to be asking him. How are you going to be any different from your dad? Because if the people have said, they love Mr. Eden, I love Mr. Eden, but they're glad he's retiring because, his usefulness in the Legislative Assembly has long been exhausted. The question then becomes, how will you be any more useful? You're not a person who's really been outspoken in the community and who has done much of anything for the people of this country thus far. So why should we be giving you our vote? And I think that that's a viable question. And I think someone like Johan Moxham should run in Savannah. Like, honestly, Johan, are you paying attention? I think Savannah could be yours for the taking. Run in Savannah, Johan. But yeah, we need to hear what some of these candidates are doing. I think they're waiting until January. I do not know why. Nomination day is coming up in January. I think we need to hear more from you even now. Let us know who you are, what your intentions are. Of course, here on CMR, we got the down low in terms of who's running. We hear a lot of chatter on the streets. Even Johan, there's been no official declaration as yet, but there is chatter of him potentially running. So let me remind you, I've just shared the link here. On the website, there's a section called Election 2021, and it has all of the official declarations so far. So here's where we're at. Lindsay and Miles have announced their candidacy. This was in August for the 2021 election. So they were the first ones to come out. Then we had Kathy Wilkes, who enters the race. That was September of this year. And then we had Dr. Frank McField, who would be the 3rd candidate for the District of Prospect, and he declared in late September. Then we had the following day, Gina Williams, who has declared for Savannah. And we haven't had an official declaration from Frank Cornwell Jr., but we do know that he's been out and about canvassing Georgetown Central. So if you're canvassing, you're probably going to run. That's the whole point of canvassing. So he is the premier's political assistant. And of course, we may have inadvertently outed him. But in my mind, this is the Cayman Islands, folks. You don't go out there and start canvassing and not know that that's going to get back to Cayman Mall Road, because we're going to find out. And naturally, we're going to let the people know that, hey, this person's interested in running for political office. Then we have Roydell Carter, former director for the Department of Environmental Health. He's apparently running for Newlands. I must say I'm a little bit surprised on a number of different things. I'm surprised he's running, first of all. That one was really a shock to me. And I'm also surprised that he's picking Newlands. Now, I know he lives in Newlands, but folks, you don't have to live in a district to run in a district. We do know this, right? And then, of course, December, just last week, Malcolm Eden has also declared for the District of Savannah. The other reason why I'm a bit surprised about Roydell for Newlands is I really wanted Newlands to be heads to head with Jess Wayne Panton and Alva Saku. Like, honestly. Now, the interesting thing about Roydell is his history of managing the Department of Environment, which apparently he worked there his entire professional career based on his LinkedIn profile, is that there were a lot of criticisms of him when he was head of that organization. I mean, a lot of criticisms. To the best of my knowledge, there might even be an investigation being carried out by the Anti-Corruption Unit. Of course, the ACC never comments on ongoing investigations. But we have heard rumblings that they may be investigating his former department. And he was placed on leave. Remember this, folks. We were the first ones to say Roydell has mysteriously disappeared, and there was no indication of where he had gone or anything of the sort. But we knew he was no longer there. And for whatever reason, the government wouldn't confirm that. But of course we knew, hello, like I said, it's the Cayman Islands. You fart in East End and Cayman Mall Road, stand up in West Bay gets to hear about it. So we knew that he had gone, and they'd kept it quiet for almost a year. And then eventually they came out and said that he had parted ways with the department, and there was some sort of a settlement or payout. We don't even know what that is. I mean, it's just shocking and amazing to me that typical civil servant, fashion, you can have performance issues and all sorts of concerns. And, you get rewarded with a payout or a promotion. We see it happening time and time again. And so we do know that he got paid out. Government would not release information in terms of how much he got paid out. And of course, an FOI attempt by Think CNS was unsuccessful in that regard. So the Ombudsman Office agreed that they could not disclose, the government didn't have to disclose that information. So he was a 30-year civil servant. He was paid off in 2019 after a rumor that he was on leave for at least 9 months or more since November of 2017. And at the time, government made no official comments about his absence, except to deny the rumors, which turned out to be incredibly true, that he was placed on official required leave. Okay, call it whatever you want. They had several acting directors in his absence, my apologies. And at the time, the department was plagued with a number of issues, including delayed pickups, queries about excessive overtime for the workers, and employee complaints. And in fact, a government audit revealed that for the fiscal year of 2016 and 2017, the department overspent by some $2.24 million in overtime, almost 800% over budget. In the report, Auditor Andy Boner, maybe is how you pronounce that, probably not Boner, concluded that fraud of public cash had been committed due to numerous failures at both the department and the ministerial levels. In fact, the report laid some blame squarely on Carter, sharing, ultimately, the director of DEH had the responsibility of managing the approved budget, avoiding cost overruns and escalating concerns to the ministry, all of which he substantially failed to do. If I had some word of advice that I was going to give to Roydell, what I would say to you is, Roydell, pull your hat back out of the ring. Don't mess with this, okay? The people of Newlands in particular, just because you live there, are not going to elect you. The scathing report from the Auditor General, or from the Auditor's Office, the Government Auditor's Office, says a lot about your inability to manage a government department, much less your inability to run for public office and to manage the people's affairs. It is still very much a management issue. And if you can't manage one thing, what makes you think that you're going to be able to manage anything else? You know, sometimes we need to just be honest with people. And I know how Caymanians are. Someone says, oh, I'm running for political office, and you tell them, oh, good for you, I'm going to vote for you, go ahead. And then behind their backs, you're sitting there going, nobody not voting for him. He can't run a government department. He's this, he's that. You know, you get fired from government, and then you turn around and try. So I'm going to be honest with you, Roydell. It's not in your best interest for anyone to lie to you. And I tell you what, no one's necessarily asking for my opinion, but I'm going to give it to you for whatever it's worth. Don't waste your time. Honestly, do not waste your time. It just doesn't make any sense. Some of the comments I received, this person said, this is an effing joke. Okay, I'm just telling you the comments that we received once we sent out the messages. One person said, that boy going to get so many kicks. I pray he got crocodile skin. I mean it going to be bad. I'm embarrassed for him. That was another comment that someone sent in. Someone says, the watering down begins. Yeah. Somebody else says, what a stress. And that's not saying it in a good way. Another person said, he's been chasing his favorite Latinas, of course, and he's a real character, cracks me up. What a fella. I think he's been finishing up his PhD and spending his money. Got the brave idea in this time to run for office. So the comments are not favorable at all. And one person says, I don't think Roydell can get 50 votes in Newlands. I'm in there a lot, and I have never even seen him in Newlands. I do know that he lives there. That's it. But he's obviously as delusional as Trump is. Would be lying to say that I do. Oh, that was another question. So, yeah. So someone actually sent me his thing that he sent out saying that he was having a recruitment day for Newlands constituencies. And they say, I know you always love jackass of the day stuff. Man couldn't run a department and he's going to run the country and your constituency to that. You take that. Well, I reminded them that I am no longer in the District of Newlands, folks. Technically I am, but I'm going to be changing that. I'm going to send my change form to the elections office. So no bobo. I'm no longer in Newlands. But he did send out in circulation this flyer saying that, you know, this was going to be him running for office and blah, blah, blah. And you must come out and do a registration of unemployed and voters. So yes, somebody was like, please, here you go. Here's your jackass of the day. Now, I'm not trying to embarrass Roydell, so I don't want to make him a jackass of the day just because he has decided to run for public office. But what I would say, Roydell, is save yourself the time. The 50 votes that you could get are 50 votes that you're going to be taking from someone who could really be making a difference in the district. And I'm afraid to tell you that based on all of the opinion that I have received, as well as my own personal opinion, that someone who is going to be making a change is not you. Now, I want to be very, very clear, folks, about how this election process is going to work. Obviously, CMR is going to keep you informed in every step of the way in terms of the election. Who is running, the rumor mill, who's not running, whatever needs to be covered. And trust me, we're going to go hard at some of these candidates because that's exactly what they need. It's a question of accountability. People can advertise on CMR, and I'm guessing that if we probably don't support them, so if I say on this podcast, which is my personal opinion, that we do not support Roydell running for Newlands, make him go East End or somewhere else, but not Newlands, please. Then people go, well, of course, I'm not going to be advertising my dollars with her. Fair enough, whatever. It doesn't really matter to me. I think if you wanted to reach the appropriate audience, then maybe convince people to run, to vote for you, to get your message out there, that CMR might actually be the spot to do so. Think about it, folks. We're the only media organization in the Cayman Islands right now who has told you that any of these people are running. Nobody else is covering election stuff yet. We are on it. So we're covering it. We're in the trenches and we know exactly what's going on. Having said that, I stand here every single day and in good conscience, I cannot stand on this program and lie to you about what my personal opinion is about some of these candidates. And I do think that some seats of people who I supported previously are up for grabs in the upcoming election. And if they ask me, I would have to tell them, yes, I'm talking about you. So some people I may not have a whole lot to say about, and others, believe me, you're going to hear the cold hard truth, because that is what the name of this show is. So some people, I'll give them an opportunity. They might be incumbents, they're running again, and we'll see what they can do for themselves. But quite honestly, I am of the opinion that we need some better representation. And you guys know that I feel really hard pressed to support anyone who did not support the LGBTQ plus community. They are Caymanians just like the rest of us, and they have really endured a lot in this community. And it's unfortunate that they can't have some of the same rights as everybody else to just be happy or miserable, because some of you are miserable as hell in your own relationships and your own marriages. So, tell them to join the misery if you're miserable. I'm not miserable, but I know a lot of you are. Barbara, how is quarantine life, girl? When do you get out? When do you get tested and released from quarantine? So there've been some other breaches, by the way. Speaking of quarantine, I'm trying to figure out about a situation in Prospect, whether that was actually a quarantine breach or not. What we do know is the security center has someone stationed out at that house on Marina Drive now, after we saw the photos. You guys remember the photos that were out on, I want to say that would have been Monday. And since then, we have seen that there's security posted at that residence. I'm trying to figure out what that situation is. Is it a quarantine breach? Is it something else that's going on? So it's a little bit interesting. Here's the photo. If you know what's going on here at this residence in Marina Drive, by all means, do let us know, because inquiring minds want to know. Here on CMR, heck, we want to know. You guys know we're nosy as hell, because we support a community that wants to know. So if we don't know and we can't tell you what's going on, then, you're not going to know. So somebody knows. I know somebody knows exactly what's going on here, folks. If you're that somebody, bring us in the fold. Let us know what's happening. But yes, there is a security guard that is now stationed at this house. And a lot of people suspected that this could have been a quarantine related issue, given the vehicles that were there and, people masked up and whatever. But I don't really know. I mean, maybe the officers were just wearing masks for some other reason. But we did do a drive-by yesterday, and we saw a security guard there sitting in his vehicle. We do know, based on what he was wearing, that he works for Security Center. And It's a very curious situation, to say the least. So if you guys have any details on this, like I said, inquiring minds are here. We do want to know what is going on. I'm going to show you a picture here and another picture in a second of what we observed yesterday. So it's bizarre. And like I've said, listen, if someone is in quarantine, right? No one can help keep an eye better on them, obviously, than the people in this country, because let's be frank here, we are the ones who have notified the government about every single breach. It's certainly not been the government discovering any of these things as happening. So let the people know, is this household in quarantine? Because believe me, the neighbors are watching and very much paying attention. So let me just show you the picture from yesterday. It is a very bizarre situation. I do know that this person is a civil servant. So again, there are questions about what is happening at this residence. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to show you the picture. Security is sitting there 24/7, monitoring the situation. And I can't think of any other reason why security center would have to be there. I suppose the person could be in some sort of trouble otherwise, but it seems a bit unusual. They need a security detail. Not really sure, but you see that car there? That car has a security center guy there in the inside, just watching. Talk about a boring job. It's like watching paint dry, but I guess he knows what he's watching for or why he's waiting there. So there you have it, folks. He's watching. Darlene, joining us from the UK, says that Sandy, that's why I love CMR, for the hard, cold truth. And trust me, we're not slicing it in a pretty way. We're just gonna give it to you. Good morning, Sandra Co. Beautiful Sandra, thank you for tuning in. Barbara says she gets out on the 17th. That day is my birthday. Awesome. That sounds good. Yes, the party will start. Karen says she wants to know too. Why security center there? Gina, good morning. Thank you for tuning in. So I don't know, but we're on it. If we hear anything, you guys will be the first to know. We will certainly advise you on what is going on. I suspect it might be quarantine related, but I cannot say with any degree of certainty. That's just my suspicions. Okie dokie, folks. What else is happening in the news? Where's Danica, by the way? Has Danica fallen asleep this morning? Our regional correspondent. We need to hear what's going on around the region. I know the Bahamas, I think. Was it Bahamas or Barbuda? I always get these B countries. Any B country in the Caribbean, I don't know why. Bahamas, Bermuda, Barbuda. I always get them like confused in my head. So one of them has put some restrictions in place to address their COVID issues, their ongoing COVID issues and concerns. By the way, speak of the devil, she must have heard me. Did you guys hear about this? Let me see here. Did you guys hear about this country where someone breached quarantine and they breached it for all of 8 seconds and they got fined like thousands of dollars because they walked out in the hallway of their quarantine facility? And I thought to myself, good on them. That's exactly what needs to happen. Find them and find them and find them some more. I'm just trying to, I think it was Taiwan, maybe. Just trying to see here if I can find the story. that the person sent. But yes, there was a quarantine breach, and other places in the world are not playing around. And they got fined like $3,000 and something for an 8-second breach. Good, and good. I'm happy when I see that, because I think those are the things that we need to be doing. And we just giving them a slap on the wrist. Danica, are you ready for me? All right. Danica, good morning.
Hi, good morning, CMR. How are you?
We're good. How are you doing?
Well.
Oh, one quick note, Danica, before we go any further, I do have one urgent and important message that has just come in.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Is my thing not working again? It's your birthday. It's your birthday, Danica. Danica had a birthday this week. Once more. Happy birthday. How was it?
It was actually, sorry, I'm just finishing up my breakfast. Actually had a fried dumpling.
No worries.
It was a great birthday, to be honest with you. It was a lockdown birthday, but it was surprisingly very good. I'm surprised.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So, Danica, can I tell people how old you are, or do you want to keep that a secret?
Tell them.
Danica is all of 30 years old. She's still a baby, folks. Look at that little face, that little baby face. So happy birthday. I'm glad that you got to enjoy it despite the current COVID situation. You look fresh this morning. Looks like you just got out of the shower. And thank you, of course, for bringing us all of the latest regional news. So other than you celebrating your birthday, what else is going on in Jamaica?
Oh, well, what's going on in the region is vaccines. So Yesterday, news broke that, the COVID-19 vaccine would be arriving in Jamaica in about 4 months. Barbados as well has a similar timeline because both countries are going through the COVAX facility. And for those of you that don't know, the COVAX facility is basically a group of nations that have come together to ensure that smaller countries that are not as cash rich as other countries will have equal access to the vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday in Parliament, in a sitting of Parliament, because Parliament is kept on Tuesday, Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Christopher Tufton, announced that, 16% of the population would be getting the jab in 2021. That's less than a quarter of the Jamaican population that will receive the vaccine by the end of 2021. He said that the first 1% of the population was to receive the vaccine come April 2021. He, however, stressed the fact that Jamaicans could not afford to become complacent, as most Jamaicans would not have access to the vaccine in the short term. And let me quote from him. I want us to be very clear that we can't hang all of our hopes and afford to be complacent on the knowledge or hope that there's going to be a vaccine very soon and that most persons are going to have access to it. I mean, this is an ideal that is not likely to be achieved, at least in the short term, said Tufton. Tufton also used the occasion to note that the vaccine currently being administered, and I think he's making reference to the Pfizer vaccine, was not a part of the COVAX facility. He did share that there were about 30-something vaccines that were currently in the test phase through the COVAX facility. I want to tell you that Barbados is going through this facility as well to procure their.
So just a second, Danica. I'm trying to understand what you just said. So the Pfizer BioNTech, or whatever it's called, it's a partnership between BioNTech, which is a German company, and Pfizer, which I guess is American owned. That vaccine, which has been rolled out now in the UK, Caribbean people who are part of this COVAX thing will not be eligible for it?
I don't think they're saying that. What they're saying is that through the COVAX facility, they have a select group of 30 vaccines which are still in the testing phase. Remember that the Pfizer biotech vaccine has been granted approval only in the United Kingdom.
Right.
This COVAX facility, I guess they're saying we're not going to be as quick to,
So that organization, they approve their own vaccine. So they don't necessarily go off of what other governments are doing. So they will independently approve.
So
That's
because
interesting.
there is a lot of controversy about the Pfizer biotech vaccine. So last week you would have seen the story where we announced the fact that the UK was the first to
approve
the vaccine. However, the US leading, I guess, disease expert or disease specialist, Anthony Fauci, basically came out and said he thought that the way the UK went about it was too quick. He later apologized for those comments. However, there is a real fear that by doing it so quickly, people will have less faith in the system. And I think that's why the COVAX facility is taking its time with the 30 vaccine trials, or the 30 vaccines that it currently has in trial. So it's not that Pfizer biotech could not be on Jamaica's list. It's probably just not there yet. Maybe it's still one of the 30 that's still in the testing phase. So once a vaccine has been granted approval through whatever approval process these things go through, then Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean will have a few options to choose from. And that's what I'm thinking is happening there. I must tell you that the majority of Caribbean countries that are part of the COVAX facility have already paid down 1.2 million US dollars to secure this vaccine. So you would have seen stories on CMR about that. I guess, again, I reiterate to your users, when I do put up regional stories, I try to put up 2 a day. They are really to give you a sense of a broader image or a broader objective that's happening regionally. So sometimes these stories can be extremely important because they can be indicative of what might happen in the Cayman Islands. Now, I know that the Cayman Islands is a British overseas territory, so you might be getting the Pfizer vaccine just by virtue of your political status, whereas the rest of us here might not get this Pfizer vaccine because it probably might not pass whatever standards we have here. There's also a lot of talk in the Caribbean about whether we actually have the storage facilities to store this vaccine. It must be stored at very low temperatures. There's concerns about storage housing and how long it can last. So that's another consideration. I will note that the Bayesian Minister of Health, who is a soldier, said that he would be interested, or he would be one of the first to take the vaccine because he would lead by example. I thought that was very commendable for the region's people to hear, because in particular, we are one of the people that are most against vaccination. There's a huge anti-vaccine movement in the Caribbean where people just don't trust it. So I think that this is an important step in building social capital, which includes trust. So that's kind of what's happening on the vaccination front. So you can look out for that story and you can get the details as to exactly the timeline and what Jamaica is doing with regards to the procurement of a vaccine. We had a story last week on it where we did tell you that there was money that had been down paid through the COVAX facility. The other story that's heating up in the region, I know a lot of you didn't really feel that story, but it is education and learning loss. And I think that's a very important topic to pay attention to, because we've had children that have been out of physical school all across the Caribbean for close to a year. It's going to be a year come March. So there's a couple of months, right? And March is about 3 months away, January, February, March. Yeah. So what we are seeing is that, and I'm going to give you a bit of what happened here in Jamaica last week in the Public Administration and Appropriations Committee, which was held on Thursday, December 3rd. What they're saying is that they're seeing a learning loss that has been so significant in the 4 subject areas that are key to assessing overall achievement of children. And these areas are mathematics, language arts, social studies, and science. They found a mean score in Jamaica of 23 for mathematics, 30 for language arts, 26 for social studies, and 24 for science. 24 out of 100 is significant. 24% means that you're going to grow up with some people that can't read. How? In a time when everything is online and everything is reading based. And though a lot of people don't like to read, the reality is the most important information that you can get will probably come through reading and not through watching a video, because videos and people and presenters often insert opinion. So reading is a critical skill. Literacy and numeracy are the key underpinnings of our society. So I think it's very important that we start to pay attention to what exactly are we doing, because I did carry the story that, Jamaican students are significantly behind, not just because they don't have access to the devices in which learning is now taking place on, but they also have the issue of poor internet connectivity. Hello, telecommunications companies. There are places where people will steal the boxes, steal the lines, and internet will be out for months at a time. In a world where we're increasingly moving, or we're increasingly being thrusted towards digital platforms, it is critical that we have proper telecommunication services. And this is going to be almost the dividing line in the region, because for countries that have good connectivity, they will thrive and leave others behind. Before, access was access to a school in your community. Now access will be access to telecommunications. So I think those two big regional stories sum up kind of where the discussion needs to be in the Caribbean as it relates to going forward. Yes, we are seeing an end in sight for COVID-19, but it also has highlighted some of the problems that have resulted from COVID-19 that really need to be addressed, because even if we go back to a very physical world, we will now be more comfortable online. And we have now seen that online does have some merit, and we will need to be progressing people into that space so that they can at least work in the space. Another issue that's coming out regionally, again, and when I say regionally and I use Jamaican examples, this is not to say that these things are not happening in other countries, in part because it's what we have access to, but it's hard to listen to 3 or 4 public administration and accounts committees. So I do use the Jamaican example, but know that many of these many similar discussions are happening in the smaller islands, and I do tend to focus on Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. We're also seeing that recently, also coming out of a meeting of what would you call this? A select committee of Parliament in Jamaica, that there is a review of a draft sexual harassment bill. This review has been going on for some time, and we've now been getting comments from different stakeholders within the society. One stakeholder that's come forward to comment on the bill is the president of the Jamaica Household Workers Association, Shirley Price. In addition to adding her comments on the bill as to how she felt that it could be made more inclusive, she also used the occasion to encourage legislators, rather appeal to legislators, to ratify the International Labor Organization's Convention 190 on Violence and Harassment, also known as C-190. C-190 is a convention that is expected to help millions of workers have safer work environments, helping to eliminate all forms of violence and harassment, especially gender-based violence. Price told the committee that Jamaica is known for being a trendsetter, and ratifying C-190 is a trend the nation needs to set. She explained that workers in informal spaces, like domestic workers, were particularly prone to and often subject to sexual abuse. She said this work environment makes domestic workers, whether they're live in, live out, day workers, especially vulnerable because they are vulnerable to abuse by their employers, the relatives of the employers, and the friends of the employers. She said that the majority of informal workers have no formal contracts, and the legislation often doesn't get enforced because of the fact that we don't understand the home to be a workplace. She said with higher levels of unemployment, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, domestic workers were especially vulnerable to sexual harassment in the homes of their employers. Labor inspectors, she says, do not have access to monitor the working conditions in this private space, which makes it even more difficult. Price said that as a domestic worker for more than 31 years, she wanted special categories of workers in the informal sector to be recognized under this bill. I will say it is something that is well documented that domestic workers do, in fact, experience a high level of sexual harassment and abuse that goes unreported because the home, again, is not recognized as a space that is a workspace. But as we move globally and physical workspaces change and they're not necessarily formal arrangements, we are pushing forward legislation that needs to take in consideration these modern day realities. And I think that Price is absolutely correct in how she is interpreting the legislation. She's also calling for the government to criminalize sexual harassment. She says currently, she's correct in saying this, currently, the law sees sexual harassment as a civil matter, when in fact it should be a criminal matter. Now, just to give your viewers some more on Convention 190. Convention 190 was adopted by the ILO in June 2019. It is the first ever global standard that aims to eliminate violence and harassment in the workplace. C190 applies not only to formal workplaces, but the informal sectors, and includes third-party violence and harassment from customers, clients, or service providers. However, for the convention to become in force, it must be ratified by at least 2 countries. So far, only Uruguay has ratified C190. So that's kind of a roundup of what's going on regionally. I will give you a bit of the entertainment rundown. Many of you would have seen that earlier this week, Spice was on her Instagram Live complaining about her recent experience inside Walmart. She said that her experience was equivalent to what she called racial profiling. So Spice went into a Walmart, had 3 trolleys, arrived at the cashier or the checkout, and she had cash. She had tons of $50 bills, I guess $100 American bills. And she said that basically, there was 2 people to check or double check her money. She said she didn't have a problem with that because she had experienced something similar while shopping in, the high-end Louis Vuitton. So double checking was a standard procedure when using cash. She noted that she became offended, however, when one of the ladies started to make remarks like this note and this note don't look the same. And she said, in her usual witty way, that she went into her bag of cash and pulled out some more money and was like, hey girl, I got plenty more where this came from. She said she was very offended. And she also said that, there is an expectation. She said, while all of the checkers and double checkers were Black, there is this ingrained perception that Black people should not be walking around with this amount of money. If this had been a white person, there wouldn't have been as much attention called. They would have done what they had to do and moved on. And she felt like, the treatment, there is a treatment disparity. I will say this.
Did Walmart respond at all? Have they said anything?
I doubt Walmart is going to respond.
Let me tell you something. Profiling at Walmart I mean, Walmart is like the most ghetto place in the world. And I love me a Walmart, but how does anybody at Walmart profile anyone? It's not like Walmart is, what was the other place that she went to, the Louis Vuitton store or whatever? I mean, let's be honest here. I'm not saying that it didn't happen and her perception may not have been reality, but I do find that a little bit hard to believe that anybody at a Walmart could be profiling. I'm just sure that they have been, and listen, I used to work at Walmart when I was in university. They've probably just seen so many people take advantage of them with fake money and whatever, that yeah, they probably could have handled it better, poor customer service training, whatever. But it's not that they were really profiling her. It's probably just that that location is always getting hit with fake. You know, first of all, who walks around, Spice? Who walks around with a wad of cash and money? You're asking for somebody in the US to rob you, girl. Leave the cash in the bank and use your debit card.
I think there is a perception among Jamaican entertainers that they got to show that they have arrived. And I think it has something to do with an inner thing within us. There's a need to brag. So I'll give you an example. If you're at home and your light goes away, people, the first thing they do is they look to see if their neighbor also has light or doesn't have light. Why? Because you don't want to feel less than. So we have this instinctive competitive nature. And I think she kind of was being a little bit braggy, but I do take her point that there is a tendency to see people of color in particular with a lot of cash and become suspicious because there is a perception that, you know, where is this little quote unquote little black girl coming from with so much cash as she
I'm suspicious of anybody who walks around with a wad of cash, because normally people who deal with cash are people who, you know, deal in cash business like drugs. Let's be honest. You know, if you see somebody with small $20 bills, in the US, they don't have a 25, but say 10, 5, 20s, and it's like a whole wad. It's like, where are you getting all this money from? Because if you go to the bank and you say, hey, I need to pull out, you know, $5,000, they're not going to give you $5,000 in $5 bills. You know,
yeah,
they're going to give you in the highest currency possible. So it is a little weird.
It's a little weird, but again, as I said, sometimes Spice for me is conflicting. I like her as a person, but I think she can be a little bit too much because I really thought that experience probably didn't need to be documented in light of the fact that she's walking around with a lot of cash, and any reasonable thinking person would be like, where are you going with so much cash? But on the other hand, I do take her point that we wouldn't have questioned it had it been a white person. And I do think that's the case. So that's just how I feel.
Okay.
But
well,
I mean,
if I was the manager at that Walmart, I would have been questioning it like, girl, for your own safety, do not walk around with this kind of money. It doesn't even make any sense.
By the way, I have some cute cups. Sorry, this is not.
You have some what? Sorry?
I have a very cute cup today.
Aww, it's a puppy with a sad face.
I know.
Did you get that for your birthday?
No, I actually went to Azan's for my birthday. If you guys don't know, Azan's is like a popular home decor store because I'm Martha Stewart living in my mind. And so I went shopping and I got beautiful tablecloths. I got things for the Christmas table. I did the most inside Azan's and I got a really long receipt and I wore it as a sash. So that's what I really did for my birthday. And then obviously I was drunk from maybe 8 o'clock in the morning on my birthday because they made me sorrel and they said it had a toops of rum. Now it didn't have a toops. I haven't drank in 5 years. So I was croaked. I was just struggling to write one story. So.
So listen, speaking of Christmas is obviously, by the way, CMR merch is coming early next year. So we will have our CMR mugs and we've ordered some of the popper. What are the things that you put on your phone that you put in the back of the phone to hold your phone? So we got, we got some of those that should be coming. And, you know, we'll be ordering merch throughout the year. So make sure you guys get your CMR merch. I'll tell you more about how you can acquire that. But speaking of Christmas, everyone is starting to get geared up for Christmas. So what is the vibe like in Jamaica right now for Christmas? Are most people going to have the traditional Christmas situation? Is it more low key? What are they doing?
Oh, I mean, I won't speak generally for people in Jamaica. I suspect there'll be a lot of partying happening. The Minister of Local Government and Community has come out to say there have been no permits that have been granted for the longest time. Round robins, all of these things are very much not to happen. But there is a thriving business model that has been promoting lovely underground parties that are super exclusive. They have like the whole aluminum foil covering the door. You got to say the password to enter. It's booming. And I've seen several Christmas parties being advertised. And so I suspect that most people are going out to party. I don't see that changing for the foreseeable future. I think what COVID-19 has done is created this underground economy, and it's to the detriment of people, but they seem to be absolutely loving it. So I am not going to knock anybody other than to say that I don't want you to be a burden onto the healthcare system. And maybe we need to sign forms that say you opt out if something happens to you. But that's what I think, because I have friends that are buying $200 gowns because they're getting ready to go to the balls. And I'm like, what ball? Is there not a stay-at-home measure? So there are parties, and they're super expensive, by the way, because of COVID-19. So now you have a situation where parties that were drink inclusive for maybe $40 US are now $200 or $100, and they're underground, and it's creating, we have this huge underground economy that's being fueled by this. And I think the government probably needs to come up with a better approach. I don't believe in prohibition, because prohibition just makes people want to go harder. By the way, for the people that are cannabis advocates like myself, as you would have known, a UN agency, I can't remember the name at this time, has moved marijuana from out of the strictest prohibited categories of drugs. And that's a major step. It doesn't go far enough, but it is a step in the right direction in terms of having marijuana recognized for its medicinal purposes. So,
all right. So concerning about the education information, I mean, that does worry me quite a bit to see such a massive like cognitive and performance decline almost immediately. Because, I mean, yeah, we're 8 months into this pandemic, I guess. But those are some sharp drops. Has the Jamaican government said what they're doing to address it?
Yeah, and this is why this story was particularly important, because member of the PAAC, Lisa Hanna, who's also the member of Parliament for Southeast St. Anne, did say that prior to the COVID-19, we were having similar struggles in getting the mass of students to be at the levels that they needed to be. What, if anything, was going to change now? In fact, this just created an even worse situation. She kind of went toe to toe with the permanent secretary that made this presentation. And the permanent secretary basically reiterated what the Ministry of Education in Jamaica was doing, like stuff like implementing literacy and numeracy specialists to work with and support students. But then the all critical problem of face-to-face schools is only in certain pilot schools. So these language and literary specialists are just being rolled out. So people are significantly behind. And does it actually work? Yes, we have programs, but do these literacy specialists work? Nobody could say for definitively whether they worked or whether there had been any marked improvement, because Jamaica had done this in the past, but we're not seeing necessarily any data to support that these learning interventions work. So yes, they have something in place. The question is, how effective are these learning interventions? And I think Lisa Hanna made the all-important point that, listen, we've done this before. What, if anything, is new? And her frustrations were definitely viewed positively among PAAC members who seem to agree with her. I want to say that the majority of students that are in the system were not engaged in the March to November period. And by lack of engagement, I mean they were probably just sitting at home having a good time. And so it's not clear whether those numbers are indicative of just this period or overall, but it seems to be indicative of this period. And it seems to be some sort of assessment to see where they are and where they need to be. The truth is that I don't think the Ministry of Education really understands that the way we've approached education in Jamaica does not work. And I think that it does in general leave the majority of students behind. I do think that even teacher training programs need to be reassessed, because I feel like a lot of the teachers, I don't think they do the bare minimums, but I think that the way in which they share or deliver their messages are not ways that engage students. And I've seen some of the things that they put on the TV, because during the COVID-19, the heights of it, they had these learning programs running on the TV, and I go, oh my God, these are horrible. They're boring. The teachers sound ancient. And that's the same experience I had when I went to public school in Jamaica. I went, oh my God, like there is no life, there's no excitement. You don't feel like the teacher is really in sync with modern day realities and can really capture your imagination. And I think that's part of the problem in the system that needs to be addressed, because I preferred private school. It was just way more engaging. The teachers had more relevant topics. They were able to connect things that we were learning to our everyday lives. And I think that's an important part of what we need to do in education. So I don't know, what's it like over there in terms of students? How has performance been? I know you guys haven't had the lockdowns, but has there been any changes in performance in the last couple of years?
I don't think anybody's tracking, but
Oh.
no, they claim that we've had some improvements. I don't know if it's specific to the COVID period, but yeah, I mean, our kids were locked down for months as well, and they had to rely on, technology. But I think probably the biggest difference here is maybe a lot of kids do have access to technology, at least the internet part. And we had some persons in the community, such as Alric Lindsay, Michael Miles, Kathy Wiltz. They stepped forward and actually donated quite a number of laptop computers to kids who didn't have the actual PCs available to them. So, I think there is a gap here, but it's probably not as bad as it is in Jamaica. But, we still have to work on these things constantly. And yeah, I mean, our children are struggling, I think, to make the necessary grades to be competitive in a global and world economy. And that has always been an issue, especially with public schools. Like, they struggle to really make the mark. But they have, I think the last report said that there were some improvements in the testing results and stuff like that. So
for CSEC, I know that Cayman has improved, but I also say this, I feel like the children that have always continue to struggle because they're the ones at the disadvantage. So I don't think we're really seeing any change. I just seeing that it's being more under the microscope now because everybody is now aware. So I think the poorer children have always struggled.
Yeah.
They tend to, in some instances, they tend to be outliers. And people in Jamaica will say, well, I walked 4 hours to school with whatever. And I go, you are the outlier. People use outlier as the rule. And I go, no, the outlier is not the rule. They are the exception to the rule. So there are brilliant children that do succeed in poverty and even come out to be very successful. But those are the outliers. I'm talking about the majority of people. And the majority of people tend to, you see it in the society. You go anywhere and you interact with them and you go, oh my God, where have you been living? And so there's this sharp disparity in the society. And I think it continues to widen because of COVID-19, because now you have people that you're either capable of using the technology or you're not. So having a tablet and not being able to use it effectively is a problem. not having the discipline, not having the parents to say, listen, you need to sit down and do this, because you could get easily distracted on your tablet, your smartphone, whatever, by social media. So I do think that there needs to be a level of that in the conversation, but I don't see that factoring in the Jamaican discussion as yet.
Yeah, it's sad. All right, Danica, well, thank you so much. And hopefully going into your birthday weekend, you will be having a fabulous time. Danica will be here again, folks, next week, Wednesday, before she takes her Christmas break. And we'll want to hear all about what she's got planned for the holiday season. Sounds like she's taking a vacation, a staycation. So Danica, have a beautiful day and a lovely birthday weekend. Put the sorrel down. Don't have any more of that. And I think you'll be okay.
Have a great day, guys. Cheers.
Okay. Thanks. Bye. All right, folks. That's Danica joining us from Jamrock, giving us our Caribbean Connection Wednesday link up. So thank you so much for that additional information. So I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday or not, because I think I just found out yesterday. But tomorrow was supposed to be my sentencing hearing, and that has actually been postponed until sometime next week. So the judge is busy, I guess. And so I got word at some point yesterday that it would be postponed. So I'll let you guys know when I have a new date. I don't have one as yet. So as soon as I have that, yeah, I shall let you know. I'm just having a quick look to see if there's anything like super urgent that we need to get on top of for you guys. There's a crazy situation in Miami with 3 guys who work for a trucking company who were kidnapped, beaten, bound, and shot in the head, like execution style. Gosh, even in Miami, that's not really the kind of thing that you hear of every day. Not anymore. I mean, back in the 80s, that may have been run of the mill with the drug trade, but that has raised a number of eyebrows in the Miami area for sure. So crazy, right? Unbelievable. I think that's about it. Oh, no, that's not it. Another interesting article. Hi, Joy. Hi, Miss Sue. Louis saying Louis, is that negative 35 degrees Fahrenheit in Detroit, or is that just 35? Did you mean T time dash, or is that like a negative? Because if that's negative 35, that is literally freezing cold. So yesterday late last night, we did an article on this young man, Levon Bodden. So Levon was in court. Now, some of you may know Levon. He says he's a local activist, and he has spoken out about child abuse, which I always appreciate anyone who lends their voice to that, as well as some other topics in the community. So Levon was in court this week. Let me just see if I can pull up his picture, actually. Where's Levon? So he was in court on Monday after having spent the weekend in jail. And it's a really peculiar story, to be honest. I sat there listening to it, at times not completely following everything that was happening. But essentially what went down is that Levon was supposed to be in court on Wednesday to respond to some charges. He showed up to court. He said he was there. And then something happened. He fell ill and he needed to leave. And then he said that, he was trying to get the police to help him. They were not of much help in terms of getting him assistance that he needed. And so he ended up calling 911 in order to go to the hospital. Now, I'm confused because what ended up happening is the police had him arrested. So I was thinking, hold on a second. If you're at the hospital Did they send someone to the hospital to get you arrested? So I'm a little bit unclear about those details. Like all of that didn't quite become clear in court. But nonetheless, the magistrate basically said, listen, this is Magistrate Gunn. She was not the magistrate actually that dealt with it on Friday and instructed that he be arrested. She said, all I've got here is a file, a court note, a note on your file that says you refuse to come to court, and so therefore you're arrested. Lavon said that he did not refuse to come to court, but he had fallen ill. And so that was the situation there. The whole story was very, very bizarre, to be honest. But anyway, Lavon has a number of charges, as you can see here, that he is responding to: driving without being licensed, breach of curfew, and disorderly conduct. Now, he has pled guilty to all of them, although at times I wasn't sure if he actually was pleading guilty, because there were times when he was like saying certain things, and I'm like, are you saying that you're guilty or you're not guilty? And even the judge expressed sometimes her confusion on what he was actually saying. So he did say, for example, in relation to driving without being licensed, he made some point about, oh, you know, he doesn't have the money for to pay for the license, but then he pled not guilty. So I was like, which is it? Did you not have a license? It was just confusing. I'm like, okay, did you not have a license? Because that's pretty much like one of those strict liability things. Either you had a license or you didn't. The Crown said that his license, I think, had expired in February. And then he said he didn't have the money, and then there was a lockdown. But then it was a little bit confusing. So anyway, he pled not guilty to all of the offenses. He indicated that he would be representing himself. So he does have a case management hearing coming up, and then his trial for 2 of the offenses is going to start next week. Now, in terms of the disorderly conduct, which you guys know that me myself has admitted to disorderly conduct recently, it's very broad, but it's anything like using profanity in a public space. So in the case of Lavon, he apparently had done this in a police station, which is interesting. And he said that basically he was responding to the energy that he was getting from the police officer. Now, I'm pretty sure the police officer didn't curse at him, but hey, maybe we'll find that out. But he said, yes, he did respond with a certain energy, and he did say F the police and other things, but yet he was still pleading not guilty, and he wanted to have the court supply the CCTV footage. And I thought, okay. So the judge has left that one aside for now and requesting the footage, and she has set trial for the breach of curfew offense and driving without being licensed. So again, with the breach of curfew, there was some confusion there, but essentially he said that he doesn't recall being pulled over by the police, and they're going to have to prove that to him or prove that it was him that was pulled over. So I don't know. It's bizarre. But yeah, so he had a doctor's note that was dated the 26th of November, not the 4th. And of course, last week, Friday was the 4th. And the judge said, well, we can't take a doctor's note that has a different date on it. But he did explain that he has medical issues. He suffers from chronic pain, he said, amongst other things. And the chronic pain isn't something that lasts a day. It can be debilitating. And as a result, he isn't indigent and unable to get out of bed some days. And despite all of that, the judge said, listen, you know, obviously you spent the weekend in Northward. It's just a reminder that if you've got a court date, you better show up to court, folks, because some judges, they will issue a warrant for your arrest, and they simply do not play around. And you know what? It's easy at times to forget about court dates and that sort of thing. Me, myself, I've been standing right here 2 days before and said, oh yeah, I've got court coming up. And then the day of, I get into doing stuff on the computer and I like totally forget that I've got a court date. And so, do not forget. And if you're there, don't leave, because the courts do not take kindly to that sort of thing. So yeah, you have to sit there and wait Normally court starts at 10 o'clock and you just have to wait your turn, and you could be there until hours later before you even called up and before you even heard. So good luck to Levon. We hope that you get it all sorted out. We will obviously be watching the situation. We do know that Levon expressed some interest in running for political office. And you guys will also remember Levon because he actually went viral earlier in the year during the COVID shutdown. You may not know this, but you may not know it was him. Let me put it that way. But Levon was involved in an altercation where someone had stolen his cell phone, and he had beaten them up as a result of that. So, Levon, yes, child, honey, child. So, yep, he beat up some guy who stole his cell phone during COVID, and it looks like Levon knows how to fight. He gave him a good little beating. This was back in May the 6th, and a lot of people were like, what are these people doing out in the street during quarantine? Everybody, the person recording it, the person, doing the whole 9 yards. So Marshall says, I'm not surprised at the disorderly conduct charges. He can be rowdy. Yes, child. And based on that fight that you see him in, he beat the out of that poor guy. And we didn't know at first that it was actually Levon. Interestingly enough, we didn't know until he contacted us. And he's like, you're showing my behind in that video. And then he started sending us all sorts of messages. And we were like, Levon, calm down, honey. Calm down, honey, child. You better take that effing video down. Like Marshall said, yes, he can be rowdy, my dear. He can be very rowdy. But anywho, good luck to you, Levon. Hopefully you get all that stuff sorted out. It sounds like a mess. And if you're planning to run in the May election, you got to get your business sorted out. Yes. All right. I think that's all she wrote. Is there anything else that's happening in the world, in the Cayman Islands, that we need to be aware of? I think we got you guys covered in terms of news updates. And naturally, we will keep you informed. The manslaughter trial continues in the banana manslaughter case. Our friend Darlene Oku, or whatever her name is, because she always says I'm mispronouncing it. I'm like, it's OKO. Is it Oku? I mean, whatever. She is leading the charge for the DPP's office on that case. So we will be monitoring that case and the progress to keep you guys updated. And I think that's more or less it. There's a couple stories that we're working on. We've got a couple interviews lined up for this week. So I'm going to be super busy outside of, doing this stuff on the show. We will be talking to Sabrina at some point, Sabrina Turner. We will be talking to, who else do we have in the lineup? We've got a lady who's being evicted from her government home December the 31st. So that interview I'll actually be conducting at some point today to upload it later on. And we will actually be doing an interview, which I'm excited about, with the Coca-Cola folks, so that we can find out more about what they have been up to. The new coat of arms Coca-Cola bottle is super exciting. I love it. I saw someone comment that they didn't like it. There's always got to be like that one person. Oh, why are we in a sugary drink? And I'm like, listen, we're on something. Can we just be grateful for that? Who doesn't indulge in a sugary drink every once in a while? It doesn't mean you got to sit down and have 10 of those, but I think it's a matter of national pride that, yes, our coat of arms has been placed on something that is like amazing. Karen says we need to set a minimum standard for people who run for public office. Karen, girl, you're talking too much sense now. You really are. We don't have any minimum standards, morally or otherwise, for that matter, which is unfortunate. But yeah, we just don't have that. One day, I think if we demand it enough, maybe, remember this code of ethics that does not exist for members of the Legislative Assembly? We as regular citizens are probably held more accountable for our behavior and the things that we do than members of the LA. And you know what is surprising to me? The fact that there are people who support the shenanigans. Karen says, yes, that person's a negative Nancy. So go and have a look, folks, at the comments on even the Makiva story. And you will see one person defending him saying, oh, well, nothing's going to come of this protest, so why bother? And I think, okay, so if you're of the opinion that nothing is going to come of a situation, that means you sit back and do nothing? Doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to me. Yes, the ultimate reason why you speak out is you're agitating for change, but change may not be immediate, but you lend your voice to these all important issues with the viewpoint that change will eventually come. So this person was like, oh, you guys are wasting your time, yada, yada, yada. A few people responded to him, and someone jokingly said that he probably got status from Makiva during the status giveaways back in 2003. And that is why he's a supporter. And he was like, well, so what? And I'm thinking, I think we just threw that rock in the pig pen and it hit you, sir. So only Owen Prehay Sr. apparently may have gotten status from Makiva Bush, because he says, so what? And he says, who are you, judge and jury? And what if he gave me status? You don't want to come take it back, inform or talk about weed, go try some. I don't know what that part is about, but anyway. So I think the point really is we have to hold people accountable. And yes, some minimum standards and code of ethics would be wonderful. And if we keep pushing for it, maybe one day we will get it. All right. Remember the video of the woman who was talking about go suck your mother? She now has 97.1 thousand views on CMR. That's almost 100,000 people have viewed that video. So she said she was doing it as a joke. Okay. Well, I tell you what, she has gone viral. If that was her intent, was to become TikTok famous, I think she's achieved that, well, at least on our social media page, because she has almost 100,000 views, which is the most we've had in a really long time on a video. I got to tell you, it's astonishing that video has almost 100,000 views, 97.1 thousand as of today. I suspect that it will probably go over 100,000 in the end. That's all she wrote, good people. I'm going to go to court and watch this trial. I never did make it yesterday, by the way. There was a few cases that I wanted to monitor, including a lady who has had multiple ICT-related offenses, the same one that a judge has found me guilty of. She has had multiple offenses, I think up to like 8 now. And someone is wondering when Jessica Swindimmer, something. People are wondering, when is she going to have her PR pulled? At what point do we say, maybe you're not worthy of having permanent residency? We shall see. All right, good folks, that's all she wrote. Hump Day Wednesday, go get it. Have a beautiful and pleasant day. Please be safe as usual. Keep it locked here to Cameron Mall Road. Anything breaking that happens, we will obviously keep you all in the loop and inform you. And like I said, super busy with a couple scheduled interviews this week. And as we go into election season, we'll be doing more of those. So you can expect to see us all about the roads, covering what we do best, which is all of the news, including the election news. So make sure you check it out. Elections section on the website. I think I shared the link earlier, but if you just go to the website up at the top, you'll see election 2021, or you can click on home at the side, and it will take you there as well from that option. So number of candidates coming out and making their declaration. Sabrina Turner being the latest. So congratulations to Sabrina. She'll be joining us soon so that you guys can ask your questions and hear directly from her. All right. Talk to you soon. Be good, folks. Be good.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.